Okay, welcome to your last lesson for this week. Today we are going to continue on. So this is a part B from combining like terms, which is what we talked about on Wednesday or yesterday. So if you did not watch the lesson yesterday, you're going to want to go back and watch that first before we dive into this. So in this lesson, again, we're practicing on combining like terms. And when we combine like terms, what we're doing is we are making an expression more simple to look at and work with. So if I had something like 5x's plus 2x's, I could combine my like terms and make these 7x's, which is just another more simpler way of writing 5x plus 2x. So in this situation, we have variables with exponents. So let's practice reading this from left to right before we start to combine like terms. So I would read this as 5n squared minus 8n. So that's my first term, minus 4n squared plus 5n. Now my like terms are going to be variables that are the same letter that also share the same exponent. So before we combine like terms, what we need to do is first use the distributive property to get rid of parentheses. Now this term does not have any number on the outside of parentheses, so there's nothing that we can distribute. So I'm just going to write out this first term as 5n squared minus 8n. So there's nothing I can distribute inside my parentheses, so I'm going to leave it as is. Now my second term is different. I have a minus that is outside of my parentheses. So that is the same as a negative 1. So I'm going to distribute that negative 1 to everything inside my parentheses. And when I say distribute, I mean multiply. So negative 1 times 4n squared is a negative 4n squared, which I write that negative as a minus sign because a negative and a minus are the same. Okay, then I have negative 1 times positive 5n, or negative 5n. So now that I've gotten rid of my parentheses, I can combine my like terms. So the number in front of my variables does not matter. What matters is that I have the same variable and exponent. And we always start with the exponent that's highest. So here I have n squared, and then I also have an n squared. So these are like terms, 5n squared and negative 4n squared. So I'm going to add those together. 5 plus negative 4 equals 1n squared. Or that's the same as just n squared. My second pair of like terms are my negative 8n and my negative 5n. Now, if those n's had an exponent, that would be an exponent of 1 because I have 1n, but there isn't an exponent there, so I don't have to worry about that. Now I'm going to combine those two like terms. So negative 8n plus negative 5n would give me negative 13n. So when I combine my like terms, I have an n squared and I have a negative 13n. So I want to add these together or rewrite them as n squared, and then I could write this as plus a negative 13n, but instead of writing plus a negative, I'll just write that as minus 13n because adding a negative and subtraction are the same. And notice how I write my n squared first. I always write my highest exponent first. Okay, let's try another one. So number 2, I have 5 plus 5a minus 8 plus a. So again, I need to understand that this is the same as a negative 1. So I'm going to have to distribute that negative 1 to everything inside this set of parentheses to get rid of the parentheses. So I'm going to rewrite my first expression as 5 plus 5a. Now negative 1 times 8 is negative 8. And negative 1 times a positive 1a is just negative 1a or negative 1. Once I've gotten rid of parentheses, I'll combine my like terms, and I always write my variables first. So I have a 5a and a negative 1a. 5 plus negative 1 is a positive 4a. Now I'm going to add together 5 plus negative 8, which is a negative 3 that I write as a minus 3. So my final answer when I combine my like terms is 4 times a minus 3. All right, nice job. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this. We've got a couple more problems to try. So for number 3, I have 8n plus 6n to the third power minus 7 times n plus 8n to the third power. So I'm going to rewrite out my entire expression without parentheses. I have nothing in front of this first set of parentheses, so there's nothing I need to multiply by everything inside, and there's nothing I can distribute. So I'm going to write this as 8n plus 6n to the third power. Now for my second set, it's a different story. This is the same as a negative 1. Negative 1 times 7n is negative 7n. And negative 1 times 8n to the third power is negative 8n to the third power. So once I've gotten rid of my parentheses, I can combine like terms. So I have an n with an exponent of 3 and an n with an exponent of 3. So those are like terms. Remember, to be like terms, I have to have the same variable with the same exponent on that variable. So 6 plus negative 8 is negative 2n to the third power. And lastly, I'm going to add together my 8n plus my negative 7n. So I'm combining my like terms. 8 plus negative 7 is 1n, or just n. So it would be plus 1n, or I could just write that as plus n. So my final answer, when I've combined my like terms, is negative 2n to the third, which I got by adding these two together. And then I have plus n, which I got from adding 8n and negative 7n. All right, let's try one more. For number 4, notice how I have parentheses and I need to get rid of them before I can combine like terms. Now this problem is a little different. I have a plus in front of my parentheses, so that's the same as a positive 1. And when I multiply 1 by everything inside, that doesn't change what I originally have. So I don't have to distribute anything. All I have to do is combine like terms. And again, the reason that I'm not distributing a negative is because this is the same as a positive 1. And when you multiply this by a positive 1, it doesn't change anything. So I'm going to just find my like terms. I have a positive 6k to the third power and a positive 2k to the third power. Again, these are like terms because I have k to the third power, k to the third power. So 6 plus 2 is 8. So 8k to the third power. Now my last two like terms I can add together are 5k to the first, or just 5k, and negative 6k. And I know that 5 plus negative 6 is negative 1k, or just negative k. So I'm going to write this as 8k to the third power, and then that negative k. And that would be my final answer. So again, I got this by adding my like terms together and making this expression more simple. All right, why don't you pause the video and try this last one on your own? So hopefully you started by distributing that negative 1. So I'll rewrite this as 8x minus 6. Negative 1 times 7x is a negative 7x. and negative 1 times a negative 1 is positive 1. So 8x plus negative 7x is 1x, or just x. And negative 6 plus a positive 1 is negative 5, or minus 5. So our simplified version is x minus 5. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Go ahead and complete your short assignment, and if you have any questions, let me know. All right, good luck, and I will talk to you guys again soon.